A study in 2025 surveyed people in 60 leading economies around the world and asked them to list the countries they consider to have the best reputations. The United States was extremely low on the list, falling from 30th place in 2024 to 48th place in 2025. That is 48 out of 60. Meaning the US has one of the worst reputations among the 60th biggest economies on Earth. And of course, a big reason for this drop is the rise of Donald Trump. But I should keep in mind that even when Joe Biden was president in 2024, the US rating was still extremely low. 30 is very low. What this demonstrates is that the United States has a very bad reputation on the global stage. And of course, this makes sense. The US has been constantly at war nonstop for basically its entire history, and the US military has intervened in the majority of the countries on Earth, according to official US government data. And we saw another symbolic example of how isolated the US is on the global stage in a vote at the UN General Assembly on the 29th of October. And 85% of United Nations member states voted for a resolution demanding the end to the illegal 6-decade-long US embargo against Cuba. Now, there are 193 UN member states, and 165 voted in support of the resolution, representing 85% of the countries on Earth, including well over 90% of the global population. On the other hand, only 7 countries voted against this resolution. That is, only 7 countries support the illegal US blockade against Cuba. Those countries are the United States and its proxies. That is, the US, Israel, Argentina, Paraguay, North Macedonia, Hungary, and Ukraine. What this also shows is how isolated Ukraine is. Ukraine claims to care about international law, but it's joining the US and Israel in voting against international law, against the will of the vast majority of the international community. What this also shows, by the way, is Viktor Orban, the so-called nationalist leader in Hungary, is actually a tool of Donald Trump. You know, he has this rhetoric in Hungary claiming he's this great independent leader. But under Orban, Hungary has also joined the United States in voting against resolutions that called for a ceasefire in Gaza and called for admitting Palestine as a member state of the UN. So Orban's Hungary is actually not an anti-imperialist country standing up to the West. Not at all. Hungary is not a friend of the global South. Hungary opposes equal rights for the Palestinian people, and it also supports colonial US wars in Latin America. And then, of course, Argentina is currently governed by a US puppet leader, Javier Milei, a self-declared libertarian and anarcho-capitalist who has been offered $82 billion in debt from the US, from Donald Trump, and also from US-controlled financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. So the Trump administration is flooding Argentina with money to prop up this US puppet leader. And that's also why Javier Milei's Argentina has joined the US in voting against the rest of the world in opposing equal rights for Palestinians and in supporting the illegal blockade of Cuba.